Greetings, YouTubers. I may have given the impression to you in my last narration of life on my home planet that there was a sudden change in attitude after Derived Energy Mark I had been created, which suddenly leapt to the voluntary discontinuation of my planet's sentient race. This may be a bit misleading, as there was fierce debate shortly after Derived Energy Mark I's conception. Please observe. Thank you everybody for allowing me to broadcast my stance on the future of the species. I recommend the population of becomes extinct through voluntary discontinuation of the species as soon as possible. Now, derived energy. These are weighty matters that require a considerable amount of emotional detachment from the issues, so that one can bring one's excuse me. Hi, honey. Oh, what is it? I'm a bit tied up at the moment. Oh, our baby is just taking its first walk, its first steps. Let me talk to the little man. Hello, hello, can you say hello? Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. I've got to go back to this board meeting. Oh, sorry, yes, where was I? Yes, these are very weighty concerns that we need to separate our emotions from our intellect and our reason and our ability to apply logic to this extremely interesting idea that Derived Energy Mark I has presented here for our contemplation. Yes. Enough of your flowery talk, Professor. If you could create a planet and populate it with 20 trillion sentient beings who were ecstatically happy all the time, but you knew that by doing so you would put one innocent victim under incredible duress and suffering as a result of this, would you do that? Well, Derived Energy Mark I, it's an interesting thought experiment, but I think it's somewhat of a false dichotomy. Yes, it's somewhat of a false dichotomy. Nonsense, Professor. There is no false dichotomy. There are two options. They are mutually exhaustive and they are mutually inclusive. Create those sentient beings or don't. You choose. Answer, please. Well, as far as we've been able to establish, there is no moral system that's built into the very fabric of time and space. So I think this is a very relativistic question, and my own subjective appraisal of that thought experiment is, yes, create all those lives. It pleases me to populate that planet, and the suffering individual is of no concern to me, because the 7 billion sentient beings that will be created will outweigh that one individual life, yes. Professor, I find your answer morally repugnant, regardless of whether there is a moral system built into the very fabric of time and space or not. Create a need, contrive a need, manufacture a need, and ensure that it is completely met, or don't create the need in the first place. There is no way of determining which is preferable. However, if you create that planet, you sentence that poor individual to a life of torment and suffering. You find this acceptable? What about two lives that will suffer as a result of populating that planet and creating all those people to live on it? What do you say to that? Yes, two lives. Yes, I think 2 lives is okay. Yes, why not? Let's populate that planet in that thought experiment. Think of all those billions of lives that we would be creating. We would lead very happy lives. That would be very good for them. Yes, yes. You are not a man of moral integrity, Professor. You would create that planet and populate it with trillions of happy people, but it would come at the cost of 2 suffering individuals. There would be no deprivation of pleasant mental states prior to your decision to populate that planet. Where do you draw the line, Professor? 20 suffering lives, 200 suffering lives, 2,000 suffering lives, 2 million suffering lives. Where? Answer. Well, yes, derived energy. It's difficult to put an exact number on how I feel about the particular thought experiment you mentioned, but I think we need to really reflect on what we mean by suffering. You say that if I created all those beings, there would be 1, 2, 200, 2,000, 2 million sentient beings who would suffer enormously as a result of my decision to create all those billions of trillions of happy sentient beings. But the question really is of paramount importance is, what precisely do we mean by suffering? I mean, could it be that suffering actually has no kind of ontological status that we can use as a place marker to describe phenomenological states? I'm not convinced about this suffering notion. Are you okay, Professor? You suddenly seem unwell. I feel a little my heart.